Welcome, traveller, to this visit to Eucla, Western Australia. Eucla is the easternmost locality in Western Australia. It's about 7 kilometres. It's about 7 miles, 11 kilometres west of the South Australian border. It's the only location on the Eyre Highway with a direct view of the Great Australian Bight. Not a lot at Eucla. It's got a population of about 50 people. It's the largest stopping off point between Norseman and Ceduna on the Eyre Highway. There's a hotel and restaurant, a golf course 7 kilometres out of town, a museum dedicated to the old telegraph station, and a weather station. Fishing is also popular. The roadhouse features a pretty courtyard garden and a gigantic fiberglass southern whale. It's also worthwhile checking out the small museum. From the top of the escarpment there's superb views over Eucla and the coast. A track runs from the roadhouse towards the Bight, and the ruins of the old telegraph station, nestled amongst the dunes, may be seen at the edge of Eucla National Park. The dunes shift, so you may be lucky to see more than you expect. The first inhabitants of the area were small groups of nomadic aborigines. By the 1860s and 70s, a small number of pastoralists had moved into the area to raise sheep and later cattle. Afghan cameleers passed through the area while freighting supplies. Eucla came into existence in 1877 as a manual telegraphic repeater station. The location near the state border was no accident. It claimed that messages would arrive in one part of the old telegraph station, be carried across to the wall, which represented the state border, passed through a pigeonhole, and then sent on their way by the telegraphists from the other state or colony who was on the other side of the wall. Also, the location of the repeater station was chosen, so it's possible to build a jetty, the ruins of which can still be seen, and which supplies could be landed. It's the only place where boats could moor for hundreds of kilometers. The cliffs to the east are the longest stretch of uninterrupted cliff face in the world. Eucla was proclaimed a township in 1885. Its wharf supplied the telegraph station and also provided a shipping point for wool, shown here. A storage shed on the small railway servicing the wharf at Eucla. This was the original telegraph station at Eucla, built in 1895 and operated until 1905. It was an old weatherboard building surrounded by a picket fence. A view in 1902. Notice the telegraph pole. It's a stopping off point for many expeditions exploring the outback. A view of the original telegraph station and town. The interior of the telegraph station. Staff who operated the station in 1896. The staff had expanded substantially by the early 1900s. and most brought their families, leading to quite a lively little settlement. The station opened in 1877. Here, telegraphists from WA and South Australia sat opposite each other, receiving telegrams from their respective colonies. Messages were then exchanged for ongoing transmission. A 1902 view of South Australian operators hard at work, while a group of men stand at the back watching. Up to 600 telegrams a day successfully traveled along the iron and later copper wires between the two colonies and later states. The operation began in 1874 when the WA Legislative Council voted £15,000 for the construction of a telegraph line from King George Sound in Albany to Eucla. At the same time, South Australian authorities agreed to construct a line from Port Augusta to Eucla. Before the line was completed, horsemen carried the telegrams between the gaps. It was completed on the 8th of December 1877 with the line extending 2,532 kilometers, a total cost of £33,000. It put the colonies in touch with each other and with the rest of the world. With the operators came their families. The staff in 1907, along with 2 pet dogs. Hard at work, reviewing the telegrams of the day. At first, the accommodation was quite primitive, a tent in 1902. It was later replaced by buildings for the operators. Homes such as these look quite middle class and very English. The operators kept themselves and their families very busy. Sports was an essential part of their recreation. Here, a local cricket team. A sports day at men's foot race in 1907. Horse racing in 1907, the Bushermen's race. Horse racing in 1907. Here's the grandstand filled with men only at lunchtime. There was, of course, lots of other activities: hunting, fishing, bicycling, simply exploring the environment and landscape. Another game, not quite sure. Tennis? Netball? Eucla, telegraph worker. The telegraph worker at home in his garden with his dog Flip and 2 wild turkeys, 1905. A telegraph repairman. Another telegraph linesman with his bicycle and camel. Bullock and camel teams, each harnessed to a dray. 1902, an early expedition. A camel team at Eucla in 1905. A photograph of Daisy Bates leaving Eucla. Daisy Bates and an Aboriginal companion pulled a buggy, or used the buggy pulled by camels. Daisy Bates is written on the backside. The start from Eucla, Gowira in buggy, Balgundra standing over the Great Plain in May 1914 to attend the British Association for the Advancement of Science in Adelaide, Melbourne and Sydney. Eucla, a 2-horse-drawn buggy beside a desert rose tree, about 1905. Collecting mallee roots to keep the fires going during a chilly winter morning. A large donkey team at Eucla pulling a wagon in 1905. With the steady growth of the use of the telegraph, new premises were needed. In 1903, a much larger limestone telegraph office was constructed at Eucla. An interesting photograph that shows the size of the telegraph community. Some of the other buildings used for accommodation. A party of telegraph workers at Eucla, they're erecting a new telegraph line to Coogardie, 1905. Some interesting stories associated with the station. Around 1897, the operators used to amuse themselves watching 3 waves of rabbits pour across the Nullarbor from the east en route to Western Australia. The Eucla telegraph station had been in operation for almost 20 years when the telegraphists noticed rabbit traces while walking for exercise. No one realized that there was an invasion from the east of hordes of rabbits. Rabbits had been released in Victoria in 1859 to provide sport and food for early settlers. It was not long before the scrub with which the beach dunes were densely covered began to disappear. The sand soon became loosened and the situation became serious. The second plague was cats, released to eat the rabbits. Unfortunately, the cats got bored of rabbit meat and began to hunt birds and lizards. They also took over rabbit burrows, and kittens arrived by the score. So began the second plague, feral cat. The loosened sand was a constant trial in the years that followed. Whenever the wind blew, windows had to be shut. The streets had to be regularly swept and yards cleared of sand. The battle against the sand was a hopeless one, and when the repeater station was finally closed down, the sand moved in and overwhelmed most of the buildings. Phil Simons in 1935 shows off a new Shell pump. With the introduction of electromagnetic automatic repeaters, coastal telegraph line was abandoned in 1927 in favor of a more easily maintained line along the new transcontinental railway line. In the 1950s, the telegraph station was completely buried, but changing winds had pushed the dunes back, and now some of the walls are exposed again. With the closing of the telegraph station in 1927, Eucla declined drastically in size. A number of people stayed on to service the pastoral industry and to cater for overland travelers between the east and west. By the 1960s, a gravel road had been completed linking Adelaide to Perth. Eucla became a service centre with garage and petrol stations, motels and a hotel. The year is 1967. Things to do and see in Eucla. Cunelda Cave. It's a huge 40-meter underground limestone cave with an entrance into a 20-meter drop, roughly 40 meters in diameter. It eventually goes to a lake over 100 meters below the surface in Nullarbor Plain. There are ladders and walkways, but the entrance to the cave is dangerous. Picture of the cave in 1905. Lastly, let's explore the myth of the Eucla nymph. The story actually commenced in December 1971 when kangaroo hunters near Eucla reported seeing a half-naked white woman living with kangaroos in the wild. The media quickly took up the story with headlines through most of the English-speaking world, including the Australian. It took quite a while until the hoax was revealed. In December of 1971, Steve Tatupas, owner of the Amber Motor Hotel in town of Eucla, together with Dory Scott, Ron Sells, and Jeff Pierce, came up with a prank, partially as a publicity stunt. A model, Janice Beebe, 1017, was hired to be photographed in a kangaroo skin to create the first hoax. The success of the story in stimulating imaginations around the world has been recognized by a bronze statue in Adelaide. It made a really great story. Goodbye to Eucla with its old telegraph station buried in the sand. Modern Eucla boasts of a caravan park, hotel, motel and service station, a Royal Flying Doctor base, an ambulance, a hospital, some government agencies and a police station. Goodbye as well to the Eucla nymph. Thanks, tourists, for joining me on this exploration of historical Eucla.